Here we go. FBI Director Kash Patel is reportedly considered a joke inside the White House, and his days with the Trump administration are numbered. That's because he's, quote, a giant douche canoe. That's right, a giant douche canoe, according to Anthony Salisbury, Kristi Noem's number 2 inside Homeland Security. Salisbury, while discussing potential deployment of the 82nd Airborne to Portland, also called Kash Patel Trump's lapdog for firing more than 15 FBI agents who were photographed kneeling during the 2020 George Floyd protests. The Minnesota Star-Tribune reporting Salisbury said, quote, "This is how Kash Patel survives. He will do this stuff for the man," unquote. Salisbury said all this while debating the need for soldiers in Portland, where demonstrations only average 30 protesters a day. In 2020, more than 15 FBI agents kneeled near FBI headquarters, successfully de-escalating an angry confrontation with George Floyd protesters. Then FBI Director Christopher Wray said the agents violated no policy. Current FBI Director Kash Patel fired the agents, accusing them of poor judgment. In announcing their dismissals, Patel said the FBI kneels before no one, unless, of course, it's our Lord and Savior, Donald Trump. Patel, confirmed by one vote, has no law enforcement experience other than briefly serving as a federal prosecutor. In an obscenity-laced tweet, Patel also confirmed the firing of an FBI agent who refused to participate in former FBI Director James Comey's perp walk. But on Wednesday, when Comey was actually arraigned after being indicted for lying to Congress, he was brought in through the back door with no perp walk. Patel, also accused of bungling the Charlie Kirk assassination, getting in the way of investigators, and grabbing false credit for the arrest after prematurely announcing it via Twitter while dining at an exclusive Manhattan restaurant. Meanwhile, the New Republic writing, quote, illiterate Republicans, like they're any other kind, illiterate Republicans have reignited a January 6 conspiracy theory. This as Donald Trump takes to social media, claiming Joe Biden's FBI secretly placed agents into crowds on January 6 to act as agitators and insurrectionists. Of course, the only little problem with this conspiracy theory is, last time anyone checked, Joe Biden wasn't president on January 6, 2021. That would have been Donald Trump and his FBI under the leadership of Donald Trump's handpicked successor to James Comey, Christopher Wray. Trump now calling on the Justice Department to prosecute Wray for lying to Congress about the FBI's role in stirring up the mob that day and encouraging them to storm the Capitol. But I believe it was Donald Trump telling the mob, we won't have a country anymore unless you all go down there right now and fight like hell. And don't forget his opening acts, like Rudy Giuliani telling the mob, quote, today is trial by combat. Trump falsely claiming that Kash Patel's predecessor at the FBI, Christopher Wray, lied during congressional testimony back in 2023 when he was asked what 274 FBI agents and FBI employees were doing at the Capitol on January 6. According to the FBI's Inspector General, the Justice Department, Christopher Wray, and even our current FBI Director, Kash Patel, 274 FBI agents showed up at the Capitol on January 6, but only after the building had been breached. They were there in order to investigate an active crime scene and try to help. You might remember Donald Trump refused to call in the National Guard as his children, Sean Hannity, and White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows begged him to act, but he refused. Instead, according to testimony under oath from White House staffers, Trump sat in the Oval Office eating a cheeseburger, watching the insurrection unfold on Fox News telling subordinates that Vice President Mike Pence really let us down and these people are angry at him. Everyone from the FBI Director Wray, our current FBI Director Patel, the FBI's Inspector General, and an internal review conducted by the Justice Department, they all say the FBI agents showed up after the insurrection to offer what is called interagency support, especially to Capitol Police who were being overwhelmed by the mob due to Trump's refusal to send in reinforcement. FBI SWAT teams, explosive experts, and forensic specialists arrived on the scene after it unfolded. As the New Republic reports, only an illiterate like Donald Trump and his supporters could conclude, after hearing that 274 agents showed up on the scene during the insurrection, only they could conclude this is evidence of the FBI's complicity orchestrating what Republican members of the House, like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Clay Higgins and Donald Trump, call the Fed-surrection, the Fed-surrection. Law enforcement officials, they actually show up at crime scenes. Their presence doesn't signify complicity. 140 Capitol Police were injured, rushed to the hospital. 5 Capitol Police officers died from the attack, one from a heart attack, 4 others from suicide. 1,500 January 6ers were eventually arrested and charged, with nearly all of them saying they were acting on Donald Trump's call to stop the steal. They believed him. They all believed Donald Trump's false claims that the 2020 election was rigged. And then, when he returned to the Oval Office, he immediately pardoned and/or gave clemency to all of them. There were no FBI ghost buses dropping off hundreds of rioters, as is now suggested by Republican members of Congress. According to the FBI Inspector General, the Department of Justice, and reporting by Reuters, the FBI had 26 informants in the vicinity of the Capitol on January 6. 26 informants. None of them reported to the FBI beforehand that an insurrection was brewing. Of the 26 FBI informants, these are people who are members of the Oath Keepers or the Proud Boys. Enrique Tarrio, FBI informer. Of the 26 FBI informants, they were far-right members of organizations who tried to avoid prison by cooperating with the FBI by giving them tips, giving tips to an agent assigned to them. Of the 26 FBI informants, 23 were there because they decided to show up independently. 3 FBI informants, they were inside the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys, and one other far-right extremist organization, were on the scene that day reporting directly to the FBI, but they were casual observers. A total of 4 FBI informants entered the Capitol that day. None of them were coordinating with the FBI. In other words, there were 3 informants who were in contact with the FBI after the insurrection began. A total of 4 FBI informants, separate from the 3 who were communicating with the FBI, 4 entered the Capitol on January 6th, but none of them were communicating with the FBI. Then there's the issue of 60-year-old Ray Epps, a former Marine who showed up with his son to protest to stop the steal. Tucker Carlson showed video of Epps encouraging January 6ers to enter the building, advising them to do so peacefully. Because he was telling rioters to enter the building peacefully, some began calling him a Fed. They started screaming, Fed. This was outside the Capitol that day. Because he was saying go in there peacefully, they accused him, and it's caught on tape, of being a Fed. From this, an entire conspiracy emerged where Ray Epps was an FBI plant serving as a traffic cop to speed up the flow of rioters into the building. Because Epps wasn't arrested until September of 2021, remember, January 6th was in January of 2021. Because it took until September for Epps to be arrested, MAGA world concluded he was being protected. Epps, after much investigation from the Inspector General, the FBI, he was not an FBI informant. The reason it took 8 months to charge him with a crime is because the FBI was going after violent offenders first. Epps was charged with a misdemeanor. No matter how many times Epps and other FBI agents testified under oath that Epps was not an FBI informant, the rumors only grew, forcing Epps to sell his business, go into hiding with his wife and family because of all the death threats. He is currently suing Tucker Carlson and Fox News. Carlson, of course, no longer working at Fox News. New details on that masked ICE agent pepper spraying the Portland Frog, a.k.a. Seth Todd, who was wearing an inflatable frog suit outside Southern Portland's Oregon's Immigration Processing and Removal Facility on October 2nd. The masked ICE agent reportedly shot pepper spray through Todd's rear air intake valve attached to an electric fan, keeping his frog suit inflated. The Portland Frog was dancing with 30 peaceful protesters during the assault. Newly released video shows Todd, unaware the ICE agent, penetrated his costume from behind to spray inside as it deflated. Homeland Security defended the agent, saying he was clearly applying riot control techniques that he was trained to perform in order to protect the lives of fellow law enforcement officials. Video of the attack shows 15 ICE officers surrounding 20 protesters. That's how many protesters there were that day. 20, you had 15 ICE officers. Local police didn't charge the masked ICE agent with the crime. The Portland Frog required no medical attention, claiming he's had, quote, spicier tamales. I'm not making that up. That's what he said. Joined by others dressed as chickens and unicorns, Todd, who's been detained 3 times so far by ICE, protested the next day wearing his frog costume with what is called the booty flap completely repaired. That's what a masked ICE agent did. He attacked the booty flap on his frog costume. Homeland Security's Kristi Noem calling Portland's costumed protesters, quote, violent, America-hating, Antifa terrorists. You know, you'd think Kristi Noem would have sympathy for people who like to play dress-up. Lord knows she does. And we're now getting new information on a California-born United States citizen taken off the streets of Portland, Oregon by ICE agents and detained in their downtown Portland facility. A U.S. citizen whose last name, ironically, is Miranda. Miranda was arrested on October 2nd by masked ICE agents who were wearing plain clothes outside Miranda's workplace in Milwaukee, Oregon, a suburb of Portland. The ICE agents told Miranda he looked like an undocumented immigrant they needed to find. When Miranda informed them, I'm a U.S. citizen, the ICE agents, according to video of this incident, accused him of resisting arrest and threatened to unleash one of their dogs on him. Miranda was then struck from behind by an ICE agent. He was handcuffed after falling to the ground and detained inside the ICE facility in Portland for several hours until he could prove his citizenship. ICE agents then drove him back to his place of work, let him out, and never apologized. House Democrat Janelle Bynum, who represents Oregon's 5th Congressional District, where the arrest took place, called this a kidnapping. We now have word Miranda has hired attorney Michael Fuller, who is threatening to sue Homeland Security and its director, Kristi Noem, in civil court. On Chicago's north side, ICE agents videotaped violently throwing a woman to the ground, handcuffing, and then taking her into detention inside an unmarked silver van with New Jersey license plates. Debbie Brockman, a producer for Chicago's WGN TV News, is seen on video pleading with ICE agents, telling them, "I'm a reporter." According to witnesses, Brockman was doing her job videotaping ICE agents arresting an Hispanic man. After that man was handcuffed and placed in the unmarked van, ICE agents tackled Brockman, accusing her of threatening the lives of law enforcement agents and interfering with their jobs. She was held for several hours before being released. Department of Homeland Security's Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs, Tricia McLaughlin, later saying Brockman was arrested for assaulting a federal officer. Really? But witnesses maintain, and video clearly shows, Brockman was simply performing her job, videotaping masked agents throwing people into unmarked vans. So perhaps Homeland Security's Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs, Tricia McLaughlin, might want to explain why Brockman was released and not charged with a crime. If you say Brockman assaulted a federal law enforcement officer, that's a serious offense. Why isn't Brockman being charged? Or maybe Homeland Security's Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs, Tricia McLaughlin, is a liar, just like her boss, Kristi Noem. ICE agents in Chicago were ordered to stop assaulting journalists by U.S. District Judge Sarah L. Ellis, who issued a 14-day restraining order last Thursday forbidding ICE agents from arresting, threatening to arrest, or assaulting a journalist who is covering ICE agents rounding up suspected migrants. The judge ordered ICE agents to refrain from telling journalists to disperse, to move along, unless there is reasonable suspicion that these journalists are in physical danger. Well, they're near ICE agents, so yeah, that puts them in danger. ICE agents are forbidden from firing pepper balls or tear gas canisters at journalists, as well as members of the clergy. This is an occurrence that's increasing, if you saw my last show. And they're also forbidden from firing at protesters. The judge ordered the Department of Homeland Security to distribute copies of this restraining order, distribute the orders to all federal agents stationed in and around the Broadview, Illinois ICE detention facility, which has been the scene of violent attacks by ICE agents attacking protesters, reporters, and if you watch my last show, at least 2 members of the clergy. The restraining order also demanding ICE agents wear identification badges. Judge Ellis said she was moved to issue this order after seeing overwhelming evidence of ICE agents using indiscriminate and inappropriate force. ICE agents in Chicago have been operating under a consent decree going back to 2022 under the Biden administration. This after groups like the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights sued ICE, and a judge 3 years ago ruled ICE must adhere to strict protocols respecting Chicago's status as a sanctuary city. ICE is under a consent decree. In Chicago, the consent decree ordered ICE to check in monthly with that judge and provide proof that the agency is obeying the consent decree, which forbids ICE from targeting anyone based on immigration status. The decree also allows arrests only after a judicial or an administrative warrant has been issued. Well, since Operation Midway Blitz, that's the ICE operation that began this summer in Chicago and in the suburbs, since Midway Blitz began, ICE has been grabbing people, shooting people, assaulting people indiscriminately, which is why last Wednesday, U.S. District Judge Jeffrey Cummings ruled that ICE agents arrested 22 people this year in Chicago, completely disregarding the consent decree. The judge ruled he will continue to monitor ICE's activities in northern Illinois, and he's extended the consent decree going well into the year 2026. Donald Trump deployed 500 troops into the streets of Chicago as well as the suburbs. That was last week. There are 200 from Texas, 300 troops from Illinois, but they were ordered to stand down after Northern Illinois' U.S. District Judge April Perry issued a temporary restraining order saying conditions on the ground don't meet the threshold of an insurrection. Really? Really? The judge noting some of these demonstrations in and around Chicago have more law enforcement officers than protesters. Yeah, like the demonstrations in Oregon. The Trump Department of Justice appealing Judge Perry's ruling, and an appeals court just ruling now that the National Guard troops deployed by Trump to Illinois can remain but cannot be deployed yet. In other words, they can stay in their barracks, but they're not allowed to walk the streets. It is estimated that the mere act of deploying National Guard troops from Texas and Illinois costs tens of millions of dollars. The Broadview ICE detention facility in the suburbs, 12 miles from downtown Chicago, has been the focal point for many of these demonstrations because it's where migrants are being processed, detained, and held indefinitely. This facility is not for profit. It's owned and operated by the federal government. It's supposed to be a temporary hold before migrants can be shipped off to an ICE detention facility for a longer stay. Detainees are only supposed to remain there for 6 hours, 12 hours tops. That's why this detention facility doesn't have showers, individual cells, beds, or medical professionals stationed there. The windows are boarded up, and there is no ventilation inside. Detainees are not formally booked there, which means it's hard to keep track of who is actually being held there and for how long. Capacity is for 236 adult males and females. There are reports of open-air toilets with just one meal a day and no place to sleep. Because it's not listed as an official ICE detention facility, that makes transparency next to impossible for the media or members of Congress to gain access to see what's going on inside. Illinois Democrats, Senator Tammy Duckworth and Senator Dick Durbin, the ranking member on the Senate Judiciary Committee, visited this detention facility, the Broadview detention facility, demanding to be let inside so they can inspect it. They were denied access. Senator Tammy Duckworth told reporters after she was denied access, quote, "We just want to go in and look at the facility and see what the conditions are, and they would not let us in. It is shameful. What are you afraid of? You don't hide. You don't run away when you're proud of what you're doing." After being denied entrance, Senator Dick Durbin told reporters they refused to give us any information. He went on to say, "I've done this job for a few years now. I've never had this stonewalling by any presidential administration. Something is going on in that detention facility that they don't want us to see. I don't know what it is," unquote. Kristi Noem, along with Donald Trump and other high-ranking White House officials, are desperately trying to make the protesters in Portland, Los Angeles, and Chicago look like insurrectionists to justify Trump's need to send troops into blue cities all controlled by black mayors, except for Portland, which has more Democratic Socialists of America serving on its city council than any major American city. So this is a war on blue state values, which are pro-migrant, pro-DEI, pro-diversity, and most importantly, pro-Constitution. Trump also needs Americans to see these cities as war zones filled with insurrectionists in order to recast the January 6th narrative seared into history, a narrative showcasing Trump and his followers as the real violent insurrectionists, which they are. Trump always accuses others of being guilty of his crimes. That's why every anti-Trump protest is an opportunity to wipe fresh the memory of Trump supporters on January 6 assaulting police officers as they tore into our nation's capital looking to hang Mike Pence and Nancy Pelosi. So when there are protests during the Trump administration, Trump says, if you loot, we shoot. If you spit, we hit. But when Ashley Babbitt was shot to death while crawling through a broken window leading into the Speaker's office on January 6, while the insurrectionists behind her called for the hanging of Nancy Pelosi and Mike Pence, Trump and MAGA world call her a martyr, a victim of police brutality, whose family deserves a Justice Department settlement worth close to $5 million. Her family was paid $5 million by the Justice Department, and after that check was cut, Tom Manger, who served as Capitol Police Chief during the insurrection, called paying off Ashley Babbitt's family chilling. He said it sends the wrong message to police as well as anyone planning to attack government officials. But Trump and his MAGA Republicans are desperately painting Democrats as the party of insurrectionists. The right-wing talking point today is attack No King's Day Part 2. No King's Day Part 2 scheduled for the 18th of this month. The Republican talking point is call No King's Day an attack on America. 2,100 events are planned nationwide, hoping to eclipse No King's Day Part 1, which took place on June 14th, Trump's birthday, which he turned into a $45 million military parade through the streets of Washington, D.C. We said this was a dress rehearsal to send the National Guard into D.C., and we were right. Well, the first No King's Day, which was held on the same day as Trump's military parade, more than 2 million people showed up around America to protest Trump. They did it peacefully with no arrests. For more information on No Kings Part 2, please go to nokings.org to find an event near you on October 18th. That's nokings.org. You can find an event near you on October 18th and peacefully exercise your First Amendment rights. Peacefully. Always the obedient Quisling, House Majority Whip Tom Emmer, delivering Trump's message by calling the No Kings protest the work of terrorists inside the Democratic Party. Terrorists, that's what he called them. Yes, because anyone who peacefully protests Donald Trump is a terrorist. Speaker Mike Johnson now saying the No Kings rally scheduled for October 18th is organized by people who, quote, hate America and want to create a gathering place for pro-Hamas sympathizers. Mike Johnson loves America so much he's refusing to swear in the newly elected House Democrat Adelita Grajava, who is supposed to be representing Arizona's 7th congressional district after winning a special election on September 23rd in a landslide. Nearly 70% of the voters chose Adelita to replace her father, Raul Grajava, who died earlier in the year. But because Mike Johnson won't swear her in, an estimated 800,000 Americans living in Arizona's 7th congressional district don't have representation in Congress because Mike Johnson refuses to swear the winner in. He's falsely claiming, I can't, we're in the middle of a government shutdown. The truth is, he could have sworn her in during any one of the pro forma sessions that take place during the shutdown, like last Wednesday. So, why is Mike Johnson so afraid of swearing in the new Democratic House member? Why? Because Adelita Grajava, who won her Arizona seat nearly 3 weeks ago, said she's going to be the 218th signature on a discharge petition forcing the House of Representatives to vote on whether to release all of the Epstein files. 218 is all you need for the discharge petition to get passed, and Johnson doesn't want that. Back in midsummer, Mike Johnson literally said he was calling an early recess in order to give the Trump administration more space. That's the term he used, more space, so they could find a path forward after MAGA World erupted from Attorney General Pam Bondi's decision to close the Epstein investigation and not, as promised, release the files. Members of the House, including many Republicans, demanded a vote on a bill that would subpoena the entire Epstein files from the Justice Department, but Mike Johnson used his power as Speaker to kill that bill by refusing to bring it up for a vote. First, he did that by sending Congress home for the summer. Then, when they returned, he tied that bill up in the Rules Committee. But House Democrat Ro Khanna and House Republican Thomas Massie put together this discharge petition, which requires the signatures of at least 218 House members to bypass Speaker Johnson and force the vote on the Epstein files. Currently, there are 217 signatures on the discharge petition, one shy. And as long as Democrat Adelita Grajava isn't sworn in, Mike Johnson will not be forced to take a vote on the Epstein files. Johnson hasn't called for the House to return until the 20th, when supposedly Grajava could be sworn in, and then she signs the discharge petition forcing a vote on the Epstein files. This is not what Donald Trump wants. By the way, the House remains in session during government shutdowns because the only way to end one is for Congress to vote to end it. So Congress is in session. Defense Chief Pete Hegseth's wife playing an outsized and unprecedented role inside the Pentagon, despite not officially employed by our government. Pentagon sources saying Hegseth's wife, nicknamed Yoko Ono, attended high-level NATO meetings and top-secret signal chats involving military airstrikes despite having zero security clearance. Jennifer is Hegseth's third wife. She previously served as both producer and mistress when Pete hosted Fox Friends Weekend. He cheated with her on his second wife. Good people. Jennifer Hegseth reportedly advising her husband's communications team at the Pentagon on which journalists to deny access to the military. Pete Hegseth's 17-page memo in September demanded reporters take loyalty oaths, promising to report only official versions of events. Otherwise, they don't get any military briefing credentials. Reporters now forbidden from wandering the Pentagon without an escort. The Daily Beast saying Mrs. Hegseth, Jennifer Hegseth, banned NBC News' Courtney Kube as retribution for her reporting on Pete's drinking, financial mismanagement, and sexual misconduct. Jennifer Hegseth, the third wife of Pete, telling the Times she's unaware of Courtney Kube. Kube right now is not officially banned after the Hegseths received pushback from military lawyers. This while the Pentagon Press Association pushes back on Hegseth's loyalty oath for journalists. Loyalty oaths. Pentagon walls are now plastered with photos of the third Mrs. Hegseth, who never served. This while her husband removed pictures of black soldiers like Jackie Robinson and the Tuskegee Airmen during his DEI crackdown. Donald Trump got his annual physical at Walter Reed Hospital on Friday. Navy Captain Sean Barbella, his doctor, saying the 79-year-old president's 20 pounds lighter than he was 5 years ago. And his electrocardiogram shows him having the heart of a 65-year-old. Maybe he should return it. This is Trump's second visit to Walter Reed this year. In July, Trump was treated for blood pooling in his legs, a condition called chronic venous insufficiency. The doctor explained that the constant bruising we see on Trump's hands is from all the handshaking and his daily aspirin intake to thin his blood. Perhaps. Trump disappointed his MAGA supporters by also getting a COVID booster during Friday's exam. He got a COVID shot. The last time Trump publicly admitted to getting one was 4 years ago during an appearance before a Dallas crowd, who then booed him for advising them to get one as well. Trump privately telling donors he's frustrated that he can't take credit for Operation Warp Speed, which, thanks to his administration, delivered America's first vaccine on December 11th, 2020, only 8 months after the COVID epidemic hit this country. Last October, Howard Lutnick, now Commerce Secretary, told CNN that vaccines, including the one for COVID, are dangerous. He said they cause autism. Lutnick added Big Pharma doesn't care thanks to the relaxation of our nation's liability laws when it comes to vaccines. This is the guy who's dreaming up all the tariffs. We're in good hands. Head of Health and Human Services Robert Kennedy Jr., testifying before the Senate last month, refused to say the COVID-19 vaccine saved lives. He repeated his charge that the COVID vaccine is the deadliest vaccine ever made. Republican Senator Bill Cassidy, a doctor who voted to approve Kennedy's nomination, accused Kennedy of claiming the vaccine for COVID killed more people than COVID. Kennedy denied ever saying that, but did testify that the vaccine has caused more harm than good. Kennedy also testified that the COVID vaccine causes neurological disorders in children, and then Kennedy refused to admit that 1.2 million Americans died from COVID. He said the data on that is too chaotic. In August, Kennedy unilaterally ordered the CDC to recommend COVID boosters only for those 65 and older. In many cases, right now, Americans younger than 65 must prove underlying conditions for insurance to cover a COVID shot, which can cost about $200 if you go out of pocket. $200 for a COVID shot if you go out of pocket. In 2020 alone, you and I and the United States government, with our money, gave Big Pharma close to $19 billion for COVID vaccine development. And we took no financial stake in their profits. We gave them $19 billion in 2020. To go out of pocket for a COVID shot, $200. According to Kennedy, anyone 6 months or older with asthma, cancer, heart disease, HIV, obesity, or history of smoking should be covered for the shot. Should be covered. But that might mean getting a prescription from a doctor. During last week's cabinet meeting, Kennedy also suggested a direct link between circumcision and autism. Kennedy added he believes that could be due to male babies being given Tylenol to ease the pain from the circumcision. God help us. God help us. The website Bleeding Heartland reports Iowa residents under the age of 65 are finding it nearly impossible to get a COVID shot, and the Republican governor, Kim Reynolds, is doing nothing to help them. Reynolds, the least popular governor in America, supported Ron DeSantis last year for president. She refuses to issue standard guidance to pharmacies on making the COVID vaccine available to those under the age of 65 who want one. 24 states have governors who have signed orders making it harder for insurance companies not to cover COVID shots for people under 65. Those are all Democratic governors. 51 Republican senators signed a letter Friday asking the FDA to take back its recent approval of a generic version of the abortion pill. The pill is taken during the first 10 weeks of a pregnancy in order to block production of progesterone. That's a hormone needed to sustain pregnancy. The abortion pill, that's what we're talking about here, should not be confused with the morning after pill, which is also called Plan B. That is taken immediately after sex to prevent conception. It's usually used as a contraception of last resort. Well, Republican senators in their letter to the FDA asked that women be required to consult with a doctor in person, not via phone, before being prescribed the abortion pill. In the letter, they write of the FDA's initial approval of the abortion pill, not the generic version of it, just the one that's not generic. They write, quote, the aftermath of the abortion pill has not only been deadly for preborn babies, but I don't know what a preborn baby is. Talking about a fetus? Fetus. There's no such thing as a preborn. My great-grandmother is post-life baby. I mean, what does that mean, preborn baby? The aftermath has not only been deadly for preborn babies, but lethal to their mothers. Contrary to the narrative peddled by the media that taking abortion pills is, quote, safer than taking Tylenol, evidence shows that the risk of serious medical complications after taking mifepristone, that's what the abortion pill is called, they say medical complications after taking the abortion pill is at least 22 times higher than reported on the drug label. In fact, more than 1 in 10 women who take mifepristone will experience a serious adverse event, unquote. Well, Trump is drawing heat from anti-abortion Republicans because his Food and Drug Administration approved the generic version of the abortion pill, also called mifepristone. Right-wing Christians are now calling this a betrayal, that Donald Trump has betrayed right-wing Christians. But Last year, Trump, before the Iowa caucuses, warned the evangelical Christians that a 6-week abortion ban was cruel and excessive, adding the Supreme Court's ruling in 2022 was perfect because they left abortion up to the individual states. Anti-abortion activists say the generic version of the pill will make it cheaper and easier for women to gain access to it. Yes, you only want rich Republicans to take the abortion pill. Republican Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri calling the FDA's decision shocking. He called the abortion pill both dangerous and deadly for women to take. On orders from the head of Health and Human Services, Bobby Kennedy, back in May, our new FDA commissioner, Marty Makary, conducted a review on the safety of the abortion pill. He concluded that 11% of women suffer from sepsis and hemorrhaging within 40 days of taking it. This runs completely counter to previous data where the FDA concluded difficulties only arise in fewer than 0.05% of the women who take the abortion pill. Kennedy calling this new study alarming. And during his confirmation hearings, Kennedy said he was open to placing limits on the abortion bill, saying he was concerned about safety issues. The American Medical Association insists the pill is effective and perfectly safe. It is estimated that in the past quarter century, nearly 5 million American women have taken the abortion pill. Have you heard of any complications? The Federal Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act was passed in 1986 during the Reagan administration. It requires every hospital in America to provide medical treatment in emergency rooms to stabilize all patients, no matter their ability to pay, no matter whether they have insurance or not. In 2022, the Biden administration's Department of Health and Human Services handed down guidance ordering hospitals, even in states where abortion is banned, to perform abortions in emergency rooms when it's necessary to stabilize the life of a mother. Biden, in issuing this directive, said this was part of the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act passed in 1986. Well, Texas's Attorney General Ken Paxton sued the Biden administration in 2022. I believe that would have been 2 mistresses ago. I think he's had Ken Paxton has had 2 mistresses in that time. And a court ordered that until this issue is resolved by the Supreme Court, Health and Human Services cannot punish hospitals in states that don't order emergency rooms to perform emergency abortions to save a mother's life. They don't do that because abortion is banned in their state, and for the time being, the Biden administration was forbidden from punishing those hospitals. During his confirmation hearings, Kennedy said he wasn't sure if he would support enforcement of the Biden ruling, which punishes hospitals for not performing emergency abortions. In March, Attorney General Pam Bondi announced the Justice Department would not prosecute any hospitals who refuse to perform life-saving abortions. I know it's a little complicated because it's tied up in the courts, but if this were the Biden Justice Department, they would be challenging that Supreme Court ruling and taking it to the Supreme Court. A lower court ruling overturning the guidance from Biden, ordering hospitals in states that have banned abortions to perform them to stabilize the life of a mother. There's been a restraining order on that. The Biden Justice Department was going to pursue it, take it to the Supreme Court. Pam Bondi says they're not going to fight the lower court ruling. On Friday, the Trump administration sent notices to more than 1,000 CDC employees that they are fired due to the government shutdown. Included in the firings were 70 people who are called disease detectives. Trump said he is trying to fire only employees who Democrats want to keep. So he's firing 70 disease detectives. Trump crapped the bed on COVID, despite what Bobby Kennedy says 1.2 million Americans died from COVID thanks to Donald Trump. Maybe not the best idea for Trump to fire the disease detectives to tell us what the next disease is. Well, now the Trump administration over the weekend saying the people who were fired on Monday will be asked to come back. Total chaos. Total chaos. Worst president of my lifetime. I will not be confused by any of this. I'm David Feldman. I'm keeping track of all of this. I'm David Feldman reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. Thanks to Bob and Mila in the chat room for keeping the conversation civil. Please help me out. Shows like this get throttled on certain platforms, so I need your help. Please share these episodes. Subscribe to my channel. Subscribe to my newsletter. Thank you.